GMAN 10G, London calling. It's your recap of Chugman Milk. Well, Game Week 10 has just passed. We are now into Game Week 11. Congratulations to all those who won. Commiserations to all those who lost, and to those who drew, well, it could have been worse. Over the past week, the race for the play-ins has heated up. A few teams have managed to leapfrog some of the previous top seeds in the playoff race. And now the table looks just a little bit different from what it did last week. It's still close though, with about 4 teams realistically having a chance to make play-ins. So it isn't a surefire, already called race yet. Now of course, hopefully you've already seen the standings on the main Rebel page, and the main Rebel page at rebel.net is the place where the standings are most accurate. Obviously, due to the Skaven coach coming in late to replace the Nurgle coach, he's taken his wins. So in reality, the Skaven coach would be more down here. But you know, we make do with what we have. This should be going out semi-edited. I should have put this through a video editing program, so you should have seen at least where the play-in contenders have dropped off and rose up the ranks. Unfortunately, I couldn't do for everyone I couldn't show where everyone went up and down on the table because I didn't have last week's copy of the rebel.net leaderboard. But hopefully for the final game week, I will show where the improvements and where the drop-offs have been over the past week. So apologies for that. But of course, hopefully this should be a lot more polished and a lot more professional than last week. On the same note, I won't go over too much of the nitty and gritty of people's teams. I won't go through everyone's team this week. I'll be going through people I know who've had some level ups and development. In addition, in terms of who won last week, I'll just merely read out the scores just so everyone's acquainted. Untamed Witches, the Dark Elf team, have beat the Dwarf team 3-0. The Khemri team lost 1-2 to the other Dark Elf team in the league. The Necromantic team came away with a 1-0 win over some Lizardmen. The Death Lizzies, which I believe is the second Lizardman team, lost 1-2 to the Amazon Girls Gone Wild. The Orcs won 1-0 over the Bretonians. And in an absolute shootout of a game, the Skaven beat the Wood Elves 4-2. Now, so you have all of those scores, you know what the standings are. We'll go straight into development to see what teams have done well this week. And there are 2 teams who we must address immediately. Necromantic and the Orcs both have level ups, but unfortunately, I believe neither of them have taken any of the level ups. Oh, that's untrue. The Black Hawk that level up seems to have taken guard, but this Blitzer here hasn't yet taken his skills, so I can only assume that's either a double or a stat up. We'll be checking in on the Orcs next week, but we know that the Ghouls on the Necromantic team, there's one, the Ghoul didn't yet take his level up, so either that hasn't been rolled, or it's a stat up that the coach is considering. So we won't speculate too much on that, but if it's a movement, I can understand that. If it's an agility though, take it. So it leaves us with 4 teams that we know now have level ups they've taken, which are the Skaven, the Untamed Witch Dark Elf team, the Khemri, and the Wood Elf team. Now we'll start with the Skaven because in this shootout of a game they had a massive haul of SPP. But it isn't where you think. It hasn't gone to where you think it's gone. One would assume the Gut Runners would now be supercharged with about 12 SPP of touchdown star player points going their way. But in fact, the level ups were Knocking Carl the Storm Vermin picked up guard, and then 3 linesmen picked up Russell, which is phenomenal. At least because, you don't often see linesmen even survive to get their first skill, let alone 3 of them in one match. I don't mind the wrestle. I think the wrestle's pretty good. Gives them a lot of survivability. Makes the team better as a bashing unit. And with the guard, that's somewhat viable. My only criticism could be is that this team doesn't yet have a dirty player or a kick piece. So if this was me building the team, I might have considered giving Lickett Larry and Schmeck dirty player and kick respectively. But at the same time, this is also pretty solid. This is great fodder for the line. So no longer will both downs threaten to randomly casual players. Could say it's a sacking piece as well. 3 strength sacking piece. But then again, Gut Runner is coming along nicely as well. But otherwise, yeah, pretty good development. Guard's good. I like having the second Storm Vermin be the utility guard Storm Vermin rather than just have 2 killers. I think that adds a little bit more to the team. But congratulations on the Skaven. Your team's looking very nice, and if it survives the last game and then also the Swiss Invitational, which I might talk about in a bit, you'll be going into Season 11 with a pretty solid and, frankly, quite healthy team. So now we go on to the Untamed Witches. Everyone else didn't really pick up in terms of... The last 3 of these teams I'm going to talk about didn't pick up too much SPP or didn't pick up really any level ups beyond 1 or 2 players. But still. Whoops, wrong one. Untamed Witches, there we go. Now this was a good level up for the Untamed Witches. The Strength Up Blitzer picked up Dodge. Now this piece will be just an absolute pain in the proverbial to deal with. You give the Blitzer sidestep and you can't really hit it off. You can't really get more than 1 hit off if you can. And if you get that to have sidestep, then the threat of hitting that off or trying to hit that off even is that it just goes to a place that might actually be worse for you. So that Blitzer has a lot of potential to be really, really annoying. He's also quite solid and protected now. So unless someone has both a bunch of assists and tackle or wrestle, that piece is unlikely to go down. So that's a good pickup for the Dark Elves. They're really coming along. The next is the Khemri. Picked up something against the Dark Elves this week, which is good because after the team took a massive blow last game week, it's nice that it's found some development even if they lost the game. And the development they took was another Mighty Blow on a Tomb Guardian. As I've said in the last one, there are people who swear by giving everyone Mighty Blow first for faster level ups. To then get into guard second skill. I'm not sure I'd like that. I'd probably prefer to have maybe two Tomb Guardians to have guard, 2 Mighty Blow, or something like that. I think also when you're lacking the 4th Tomb Guardian, guard would have been a better pickup. But at the same time, still, nice to get a Tomb Guardian leveled. So I'm glad that the Khemri coach got something out of that. And the Woodies got something. Let us find those Woodies. Oh, there they are. It's not too exciting. And I'm probably sure that the Wood Elf coach would kind of curse his luck here. But the Kick Linesman managed to pick up a second skill. Wrestle for a bit of utility. Not terrible, really. Not the worst thing you could get. Seems to have picked up a MNG, I think. Yeah, MNG last game. But Wrestle's not terrible. Might as well. At least the Kit Linesman has more than 1 use now. At least it's not a dirty player getting that level up. So those are all the level ups for this week. Obviously, by far the biggest haul goes to the Skaven coach. But this week didn't seem to be a big week for development. So I'm sorry for every other team. I'm not really going to look too much into your teams. I do know for a fact that a player was lost for the dwarves. They lost their Troll Slayer, or moved down their Troll Slayer this week, just gone, which is going to be a bit of a blow for their next game, but we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, I apologize for not covering everyone else's team this week. As I say, we're trying to keep it a little bit more concise. So we'll move straight on to really where this leaves us for the play-ins, because I still think that with the spectre of the play-ins haunting over us, we should get to that pronto before we talk about the week ahead. And now there are 4 teams, just 4 teams that can make all in all the playoffs. Those teams are the Necromantic, coached by Okim, the Amazons, coached by Mortal, the Dwarves, coached by Godon, and the Bretonnians, that are coached by Ambertank. And the top 3 have a good chance. These ones have the best chance. The Bretonnians have a little bit of they have to have quite a bit of luck when it comes to their fixtures to sneak into the playoffs as the 2nd seed. Here are the conditions for the playoffs. For the Necromantic and the Amazons to go to the playoffs, they must win their games next week. For the Dwarves and the Amazons to go to the playoffs, they must win their games next week. Because here's the thing. The Amazons play the Skaven coach, but the Necromantic and the Dwarf team face one another. Thus meaning, it's almost if only one of the Necromantic or the Dwarf coaches will actually get to go to the play-ins. There is a third condition, however. The Bretonnians can still make it as the 2nd seed, but they have to have it so the Necro win against the Dwarves, because Dwarves are now on the Rebel.net standings 19 points, while the Necro at 21. So at 17 points, the Bretonnians can't close the gap on the Necro, but they can on the Dwarves. So they have to have the Necro win. But then they must have the Amazons lose while winning by about 2 touchdowns. So if the Amazons lose 1-0 in their next game, and the Bretonnians win 2-0, I believe when it comes to tiebreaker, because it will be a tiebreaker of 20 points each, I think the Bretonnians win that because of their head-to-head record, but I'm not entirely sure. But those are the conditions for each race qualifying. Only one of the Necro or the Dwarves will qualify. The Amazons are very likely to qualify, but they pretty much have to win or draw to qualify. Whilst there can be no draws in the Necro and Dwarf game. Everyone else, I'm afraid, is out of the playoffs. There's no chance for them to get in. The last coach I said last week could maybe get in, I think, was the Lizardman team by Sampitu. But I'm not sure, looking at the last week of schedule, if that was ever possible. So if I got your hopes up, I apologize. But those are the top 4. You guys now know what you need to do. Good luck on the week ahead. It'll be very exciting to see who manages to sneak in and who manages to just miss out. But obviously, good luck to all of you. With that all out the way now, we'll talk about the week ahead. Who plays who, and my brief predictions. Let's start off with Sanderpants versus the Untamed Witches. Now this is Khemri versus the Dark Elves. And my first thoughts are, the lack of the 4th Tomb Guardian is going to hurt Sanderpants massively, in addition to the fact the Untamed Witches are just more agile, they're faster, and their team's a bit healthier. In addition, that horrible Blodge strength up piece will be a constant thorn in the backside of Sanderpants. In addition to just all the dodge in general. I don't think Sanderpants has... I don't think that team has what it needs on it to deal with the Untamed Witches. And therefore, I think this will be quite a comfortable win for the Dark Elf team. Prove me wrong, Kemry. Prove me wrong. Next is the single biggest game of the play-ins, of the league, of the week, potentially of our lives. The Dwarf team versus the Necromantic team. As I've said, whoever wins likely gets in. Or actually certainly gets in. I don't think there is almost any way for one of these people, one of these coaches, one of these teams not to qualify. So, let's see. This will be one that I'll probably cover a bit. I might stream it if someone tells me if it's on. Otherwise, I'll give this a lot more of an in-depth look when I actually come to the last recap next week. So, I don't need to state any more how important this is. The next game is the Rolling Renegades versus Death Lizzies. This is, I believe, the Dark Elves versus the Lizardmen. My predictions for this is both coaches have struggled this season a bit. But this could be a game that either ends up being a draw, or the Skinks fall apart and the Dark Elves capitalize. Alternatively, if not that, then the Saurus just tie down all the elves and nothing go right for them. So, hard to predict. I'm going to say maybe 2-2 just to be safe. Then we have the second Lizard team versus the Orcs. Bash versus Bash. But, you know, I have to say, although the Orcs finally meet their match in this league in terms of strength, because the Saurus are all 4 strength, you know, kind of out-strength their Black Orcs and their Blitzers in a generalized view of things, because if you have 6 Saurus and a Croxagore, then that's going to be much more than the 4 Black Orcs and the 3 strength Blitzers. The problem is that the Lizard team doesn't really have any guard. They just have block, so they'll be blocking fine, and they can get 2 dies in most places, but if they come across a line of Black Orcs and they get trapped in it, the guard on the Demolition Orcs team will really do a number on them. If the Blitzers had a little bit more guard, I'd say it's a lot more clear. The Mighty Blow can do wonders, and it can definitely do a number on the Skinks, but I think the Skinks are a little bit, on this team, maybe a little bit better protected, generally, because of their skill choices. But at the same time, I think I give it to the Orcs because of that extra bit of guard they have, in addition to the fact that the amount of Mighty Blow on those Blitzers kind of poses a massive threat to the Skinks. So I can see the Skinks popping a lot more than, say, the Orcs losing a Bash War to the Saurus. So, could be a 2-1. I'd say 2-1 to the Orcs. Next, we have a very important game as well. This game is very important. It's a must-win, but it's not in the same sort of league as the Dwarf versus Necromant matchup. The Amazons have to beat the Skaven coach. They have to. Otherwise, their whole playing spot is in jeopardy. In terms of predictions, the Skaven coach hasn't been in the league that long, but it seems that, I think on the record of 3-0-1, the Skaven coach is showing himself to be a fine and competent coach. He's got a bit of development through Ramp Up. The guard that he picked up on the Storm Vermin could be useful in certain pockets. And the Gut Runners completely outrun everything that the Girls Gone Wild have. The move up catcher might be of use here, but the problem is one piece. However, although I do think that Amazons suffer against, say, Skaven because of the high movement of the Gut Runners, this team is better at bashing. much better at bashing. I think if we go and look at the team just briefly again to remind ourselves, they have tackle, so they have ways to deal with the gut runners. They have a little bit of guard. They match guard. They don't have as much mighty blow. It's pretty much this is the one danger piece. If this blitzer manages to score some hits on gutter runners or otherwise important pieces, then Yamaki would really do a number on this Skaven and could potentially have this snowballing effect of Skaven start losing the bash war more and more. The Amazons get more and more hits on the Skaven, and even if you're hitting without Mighty Blow, the fact is that these will barely ever go down because he doesn't have any tackle. This Skaven coach has no tackle, while getting more and more blocks in. So the volume of blocks will start to add up, I'm sure. In addition, the agility on the team is quite nice because an issue of Amazons is if you lose the ball in a vital spot and you get kind of surrounded, you don't really have the tools to pick it back up again. But this Amazon team does. This Amazon team has a good potential receiver, a good piece to pick up the ball. It has everything. It really can deal with the rats in the way that the rats can't deal with it. In addition, the dirty player and also two-man bench means if something like a gut runner or a storm vermin goes down, there'll be massive issues for the Skaven. So although I think the Skaven coach is very good, the Amazon coach evidently is showing themselves to be very good. So I have to say, probably going to be something like either a 2-1 towards the Amazons or a 3-2. It'll be one of those slim margins. It might not be a shootout. It might be a shootout, but I think that the casualties will start rolling for Girls Gone Wild because they just have not only so much protection, but they're much better at the bashing game. So, a win for Amazons. Lastly, we have a pretty decently important game as well. This is the Bretonnians versus the Wood Elves. Now, as we saw last week, the Bretonnians bit bare bones. That they're missing a lot of players this week as well. They took some injuries. They took some missed next games. They're missing their only guard piece. They have a tackle blodge blitzer, but everything else in the team, all the other blitzers just don't... They're just not that developed, unfortunately. They have 5 edge, but then again, the 5 edge on that team is probably not comparable just to the all-around movement and general menace, especially from a strip ball war dancer, for example, that the Wood Elves possess. A bit lucky for the Bretonnians is that they will be safe from having to deal with 5 agility shenanigans, and they will also get about what do I want to say 110k in inducements, and they could put, like, say 40k if they wanted to out their own money into a wizard or something like that, or they could put into bribes. They can put into bribes and just see if they can have some sort of fouling game. They have inducements, which is good for them, but I really don't know how much it will swing the game into the Bretonnians' favor. I just think that they have essentially 2, maybe 3 really good pieces. If that blitzer is stranded or is in the wrong position or gets cazzed even, this team doesn't have the same... It doesn't have any of the potential to deal with the Wood Elves. It has a little speed on the blitzers, but as I say, the team right now, because of the deaths and injuries it's took, it really just has this blitzer and this insane blocker. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to give it to the Wood Elves. I think the Wood Elves will probably win this. I just think they have more to the team than the very beat-up Bretonnian side. I didn't actually predict what would happen between the Dwarves and the Necro, I don't think. Probably because this is the most important game, I should have saved it for last, so yeah, let's say that. What do I think is going to happen in this game? Oh, well, uh, I don't think the missing Troll Slayer is going to be a big deal because he doesn't have any development. I think that you can potentially win the bashing game with this dwarf team. I really do. I think you have a little bit because of the guard, and thank God this dwarf team has guard. Thank God it has the guard. The guard might be enough to tip it over in certain respects, but at the same time, you're dealing with like strength up werewolves with mighty blow. So claw and strength up is in play. The players are or at least the two dwarves are so much faster than the dwarves. It's tough to say. It's tough. The flesh golems having nothing is good for them. That's good. I think if they allow themselves to get bogged down and the werewolves go into silly positions, then the necromantic coach will suffer. The problem is I just don't see a way for the dwarves to do much against the werewolf. That thing is a pain. It's so fast, it can get away from trouble after blitzing. It can blitz pretty much anywhere, anytime. The only weakness of this team, of this necromantic team, is the lack of guard and the undeveloped flesh golems. Personally, I would have liked to see guard on these whites as well. If these two had block and the whites had guard, it'd be a whole different story. It would be a clear. I'd have to clearly say that the necromantic were favored in this matchup. As it is right now, I just merely have a feeling that necromantic might do a lot more damage, and even if not more damage, then the dwarves will get bogged down with the amount of chaff and also annoying pieces like the stand firm flesh golems that the necromantic team have, giving the really fast werewolves and the one ghoul pretty much free reign to go where they like. So I'm going to have to say, if I had to make a prediction for what the final two teams the players were going to be off the back of this game, it would be the Amazons and then also necromantic team. So, those are just my 2 cents. Prove me wrong. Last week with a few shock results, for example, I think I predicted the Dark Elves to potentially win this, but 3-0 was a massive margin. But with shock results last week, anything can happen. It's all to play for. And with that, we come to the conclusion of the Week 10 recap. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you also enjoy your last week of the regular season. A lot of you are new. Some of you might be complete rookies. Some of you will be playing Red Bull for your first time this season, and I hope that you got a sense of community and a real enjoyment of the game out of your Red Bull experience so far. We apologize, of course, for the sort of the lag on recaps. We know you've had a new recap come in. You haven't really had the same sort of experience that, say, I have in GMAN 10A with our fantastic recap team, but hopefully we're making up for it, and hopefully this can be something that some of you will expect if you decide to come again next season and play with us for the next season and bring your teams back and so on and so forth. Now, hopefully that was also a lot more of a concise recap, something that was more up to speed, more just what you'll be experiencing more and more in the next season and seasons to come. Obviously, we've had to we've had somewhat less to say. We don't have to really get to know each other now, and also second recap by myself. So anyway, regardless, thank you for tuning in. Good luck to all coaches in match day 11, and I will see you next week for your next recap. But until then, take care and good night.